This is something that I've never experienced on a flight before. So we were sitting there and it was at the same time that it was the food service that had come out. And there was lots of smells happening, lots of smells because everyone was opening their food at the same time. And I leant to my sister and I was like, Alicia, what does that smell? And she was like, I think it's just the food trolley. And I was like, I think it smells like shit. Like if that's the food, we're all in a bit of trouble here. I looked down at the toddler who's 2.5 sitting next to me. This child has shit their pants.
Oh,
They've shit their pants. They're wearing a nappy and they have shit themselves. And then it was confirmed because the mother leant over. She did the mother obligatory, like you pull the back of the pants out and you look what's inside. And she clocked it. She was like, oh yeah,
can I ask, do you look or do you sniff?
both. Sometimes you stick a finger in there, really play the roulette game.
Fuck off, you do not. That's disgusting.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Laura.
And I'm producer Keeshia, filling in for Brit while she's in the African jungle. But Laura, she's yet to eat something weird. I want to check. Sorry, straight off the bat, she said before she went into the jungle, she was like, guys, don't vote for me to do the trials because they're gross and they're weird. I'm vetoing that and saying, sorry, Brit, love you, but I want to see you eat some testicles.
Well, I think that this is the question though, right? I would also like to see Brit eat some testicles. I'm sure Ben doesn't want to see her eat some testicles, but you know what? It's all for a good cause. I think that there's twofold as to how people attack the jungle. Some people like to go under the radar because then it means that they don't have to do all of the disgusting, scary, literally foul trials. But the only way that you actually get airtime is by doing all of the disgusting feral trials. And so now we are at the point where, unfortunately, guys, we do not need to protect Britney anymore. We need to throw her under the proverbial I'm a celebrity bus. So please go and vote so that this week at least she's doing one of the foul Tucker trials, because I think she's had it too easy so far, even though I didn't get to watch last night's episode.
She would be absolutely raging at us.
Yes, vote. Do it. This is our time.
I also did figure out how to vote because that was a question that I had. You can go onto the website. I'm pretty sure you can do it on the app too, but I just did it on the template website and you can vote for her to do the trial. And I will be doing that because I want to see her be balls deep in something weird and something funny. But, Laws, you did miss last night's episode because you are in another continent right now. This is our first cross-continental record.
We do records from her being in Scotland. And this is the first time, Keish, you and I have ever done a record across continents. And that's because last night, it was like the morning was Easter frenzy with the kids. And then 2 p.m. came round. And I was like, I'm sorry, sweetheart. The children are insane. And I have to go and get a flight now because I'm going to Bali by myself. But I actually flew here last night with my sister and we're here doing other Tony May work stuff.
Well, before we get into that, can I ask you how your Easter was? I saw the Easter egg hunt that the little Rugrats went on. It was very cute. To be honest, I was a little jealous. I was like, Laura, why didn't you invite me to come over and collect eggs? I would have enjoyed that.
This is my question though. Like, I don't know what because our children are very small. So like Molly's 4, Lola's 3. I don't know what a reasonable amount of eggs is for small humans going on Easter egg hunts. The Easter bunny was very generous in our household and my children were running around with like 40 eggs each. And knowing that I was the one that was leaving the country and Matt had to deal with that, I did feel slightly guilty. But at the same time, I was standing there whilst Lola was like running around trying to pull eggs out of trees. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to build resilience in these children. I don't know.
Is it going to be once they've consumed all of this sugar? Probably not.
I don't think this is it. These kids don't hear no enough is what I'm feeling right now. But no, it's so funny to me because like now that we have kids and also the Christmas as well, these big milestones, unless you make them something, they kind of just pass you by. But then when you have kids, like it's something that forces you to make them something really special. Like you have to be the memory makers of your household. So Easter was never a big deal for us, but now it's such a big deal in our household. And, you know, we're not religious, so we don't celebrate it for any of the religious reasons, but the Easter bunny, he makes a show in our household. And it was really, really cute. But the only thing that absolutely fucking sucked is literally after the Easter bunny had come and we did the Easter egg hunts and stuff in the morning, both the kids were like, I'm feeling a little bit hot. I'm feeling a little bit tired. And I thought maybe it was just from all the excitement, but everybody in our household has come down with a cold. And then last night on the plane, I was laying there and I was like, like, you know, when you get that tickle in your throat and you know something is brewing. And so now I'm in Bali. It's been raining since we got here and I think I'm getting sick. So I was like, this is awful.
It's just a trio of disasters within my household that is just my boyfriend and I. To be honest, it got like halfway through the day yesterday and I FaceTimed my brother, and we FaceTime all the time because he has 2 kids and another one on the way. And it didn't really actually dawn on me that it was Easter until they were talking about, what chocolate they'd consumed, and they were showing me the little goods that they'd collected. And I kind of just forgot to make Easter plan. I mean, I guess for some people, even if you are child free, I think that a lot of people go away for the long weekend, but we didn't. So we just stayed at home and had this really quite quiet weekend. It was really peaceful, and I caught up on a lot of things that I wanted to do. But I think it lacked a little bit of magic. It lacked, you know what it lacked? It lacked an Easter hat parade. Okay. That's what I want to bring back. I want that to be the tradition in my household, is that we make Easter hats and have our own little parade through the hallway.
Keisha, I know what I'm going to get you for Christmas then. I'm going to get you a hot glue gun, because nothing has a can-do attitude like a mum with a hot glue gun. No, I think that this is, obviously like Easter's probably not the hill to die on by any means. Wow, that might not sit well with Christian people listening.
Is it the cross to die on? For 3 days before you're resurrected?
No, but I mean, when you don't have kids, like when you are either single or you're in a relationship, but you're an adult, so you don't have your parents making things special for you, right? Like you are responsible for making moments special yourself. It's so easy for things to pass you by without actually doing anything that kind of makes that day feel different to any other day. And I know Easter's kind of a weird one because it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things for a lot of people, but I think this happens to people at Christmas time. Like if you're not around your family, if you're not around people who really make it something special, it's so easy for these moments to feel like just another day. But it's because sometimes in your own household or in your family, you've got to be the memory maker. You've got to be the tradition maker. And that was a big realization I had kind of like last year or the year before. I was like, no one's going to make this special unless we do. And so now it's become this very big thing. And I think in our household, it's me. Like I'm the one that kind of goes all bells and whistles and, 700 eggs big. But at the same time, it's important because I remember those things being really special when we were kids. And I think my mum, even though she was a single mum with 3 kids, she really went above and beyond to do all those little magical things that make those moments so special.
Yeah, I also think that there's even a subcategory to this, and it's whether you're a planner or not. Like, I feel as though I need the people around because I'm the opposite of a planner. I mean, I kind of euphemistically say I'm very spontaneous and I'm flexible and I'm adaptable. But the truth is I just hate making plans because it causes me a lot of stress and anxiety, to the point that on both Good Friday and yesterday, I didn't realize that the shops weren't open. So we had to get takeaway food because I was like, fuck. I didn't realize that they'd be shut. And I sat myself down and I was like, you've got to be better at this. You've got to be more aware of what's going on around you and stop living in this like non-planning bubble, because I think maybe this is a result of living in Sydney as well. Everything, because I've lived in regional cities and it's not as convenient. You have to kind of have that forethought a little bit more. But now there is a grocery store less than 100 meters away from my house, and it's ridiculously expensive because it's one of those metro ones,
I also think that maybe convenience allows you to like lean into your ADD queen status, because you're like, oh, I don't need to organize anything. I live and thrive in chaos. It's fine. I can forget everything because there's always things accessible to you, which is fine until there's not. Yeah. Which I'm very similar to you. Like I will quite happily we don't need to know what we're having for dinner. It's fine to sort that out at 6:00 at night when the kids are screaming. But there are moments in life where life would just be easier if I was someone who naturally was a planner.
Yeah, but I think it's really nice that because you have that quality to you as well. Like that's a personality trait that you've had. I think that's why we vibe. We're on the same wavelength. But when it comes to your kids, you plan everything. Like you are so dedicated to making these really special and momentous events for them. And I think it's really beautiful. I think it's like something that I think a lot of parents would experience when they're like, well, even though this doesn't come naturally to me, I want it to be worthwhile for my kids. I do have a question though. Did you allow for the Easter Bunny to plant any of the eggs in any of your plants, or were they off limits? Were there rules for the Easter Bunny?
The eggs were not hidden in the pot plants inside the house because the pot plants are out of bounds and children are not allowed to touch those. And they know that they're not allowed to touch those. So the Easter egg hunt, the Easter Bunny was very, very clear that this is an outside activity. Am I insane?
Yes.
Yes,
you are.
That we're okay with it.
While we're talking about this, can I please request, I know you guys all mean well. I reckon we get about 20 to 30 videos sent to the Life Uncut Instagram every day about plants.
Don't stop. Don't stop.
Do stop. Okay, send them to Laura directly. I'm like, that's so great. But when I've seen it 30 times, I'm like, oh, these are not my people.
No, but you're my people, and that's okay. There's something for everybody here. That's the thing. I can't tell you the amount of you that send me reels of plant content that you've come across, and I'm so here.
That's enough about the plants. We've had enough.
I feel so loved and so understood and surrounded by my community and supported in everything. So thank you.
For Laura's birthday, we got her a couple of plant-related gifts, and when I handed her the pH and I don't even know what the other one, water meter or
No, it's a pH. You put it in the soil. It tells you the pH, tells you the water, how moist the soil is. It tells you how much light your plants are getting. It's a meter for all of those things.
And she was like, cool, I've already got 3 of those, but thanks. I do need another one, actually. It's like, far out. We've descended into chaos.
I have a question for you. So obviously, like whenever you fly on planes, there's always the conversations around plane etiquette. I feel like every single time I get onto a flight, there is something that happens that makes me question what isn't okay plane etiquette. And often I think now, being that I have my own kids, I'm a lot more tolerant, especially of other people's children. And I think the big one often comes down to kids crying on planes or being disruptive, right? Which would have bothered me in the past. And now it doesn't bother me because I feel so deeply for the parents who are experiencing it, because most of the time it's affecting the parents more than anyone. Like they're so upset or so they feel so anxious that it's their child that's the one that's misbehaving, right? So this isn't about screaming though. This is something that I've never experienced on a flight before. So we were sitting there and it was at the same time that it was the food service that had come out. And there was lots of smells happening, lots of smells because everyone was opening their food at the same time. And I lent to my sister because she's traveling with me. And I was like, Alicia, what does that smell? And she was like, I think it's just the food trolley. And I was like, I think it smells like shit. Like if that's the food, we're all in a bit of trouble here, Qantas.
Usually it's the food that makes you shit, but when it starts by smelling like it, not a good start.
This is not a good start. Anyway, so then the smell was growing stronger and the trolley was kind of coming up the aisle. So I thought maybe it is the food. And then after about 5 minutes, I looked down at the toddler who's 2.5 sitting next to me. And I was like, oh, that's not food. This child has shit their pants.
Oh.
Okay. They've shit their pants. They're wearing a nappy and they have shit themselves. And then it was confirmed because the mother leant over. She did the mother obligatory, like you pull the back of the pants out and you look what's inside. And she clocked it. She was like, oh yeah.
Can I ask, do you look or do you sniff?
Both. Sometimes you stick a finger in there, really play the roulette game.
You do not. That's disgusting. You do not put a finger in there.
Ah, yeah.
Like a dipstick. That's cool. What do you do after if it's confirmed that there is shit?
Oh, that's an immediate go to the bathroom. That's an immediate nappy change, hand wash situation. Okay. But it happens. It happens.
That's made me feel
so
sick.
She looks. She clocks it. She knows. But then she's sitting, so we're on the 2 on the left and she's in the 3 in the middle. I know what she's doing because the food trolley is coming up the aisle and she's now hedging her bets. Do I do it before food delivery or do I do it after food delivery? Because she didn't want to miss the trolley and then get stuck at the end of the change table.
What do you mean? That's not a question. You do it before. Otherwise, everyone is going to stop it.
So she sat there.
Stop it.
She waited.
Fuck
and
off.
I had my spicy beef noodle and the whole time all I could smell was her child with the shit in their pants. And she didn't do it. And I honestly sat there with the biggest life conundrum at the time. And I was like, do I ask her to go and change her child's name? Like, is that okay? Do I either cop this and just accept that this is my fate? Do I say something and say like, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but your child needs a diaper change? Or do we just pretend that this isn't happening? Because she was quite happy to pretend it wasn't happening.
Oh my gosh, I'm actually so outraged for you. Like it's taken my breath away, which is probably how you felt.
It took mine away as well. I was breathless.
Can I quickly, before I answer the question, is it one of those things like, you know how they say that you get used to your own BO smell? Do you get used to your own kid's shit smell so you don't think it's as bad as what other people might? Like, is it exposure therapy?
I think it's more tolerable when it's your own, but no, it's still exactly what it is. It's not like, no. Nobody is sitting next to that enjoying it in comfort. Like no mum is reveling in their child's poo smell.
This is fucked. I think I'm actually going for secret option number C. And that would be that I don't have the balls to specifically address it with someone. Like, I don't have the confidence to go, hey, excuse me, just so you know, we can smell your child's feces. It's lingering in the air while we're meant to be consuming food. I don't think I'd have the confidence to do that because I can be a little bit more awkward than that. But what I do definitely have within myself is the passive aggression to make really loud references to the smell around the person. So I think I would turn to your sister and I would deliberately very loudly be like, what the fuck is that smell? Like, where is that coming from? Alicia, did you shit yourself?
It smells like a toddler shit their pants. I need to get this out of my system. 25 minutes.
Yuck.
25 minutes. She ate her entire meal.
No, that's not
waited
okay.
for the cart to move through the whole of the plane and then took her child to change his nappy.
That's so selfish because I often think I'm really happy when I get a seat that's towards the front of the service because, they go in bits. Like, it's not always towards the front of the plane. Sometimes you can get stitched up and you can be at the front of the plane but the back of the service. And you just know by the time they get to you, you're not going to have your choice of the chicken or the beef. You're not going to have your choice of the meal that they offer you because they're going to be out of the good ones and you're going to be stuck with the bad one.
The only thing that's left is the shitty vegetarian one.
Yeah, that no one wants unless you're a vegetarian. And I think they get served first.
I don't even know if she registered that other people knew what was going on, but it was so deeply offensive and it is something that I hope nobody ever has to experience on a plane. It was a step too far. Screaming baby, I can handle. Baby covered in feces, not so much my jam.
I think you're really polite for not saying something. I think you're really, really like, or was it a part of you that you're like, if I kick off about this, is she going to leave a bad review on the podcast? The sacrifice is too great. You're a better woman than I for not saying anything. But you and your sister Alicia are over in Bali at the moment and it's for Tony May. And I remember a couple of months ago, I saw this video that was made about how you guys make jewelry over there. And I was so fascinated by it. I found it so incredibly interesting. And I don't know if this is something that everyone is curious about, but it was in that moment that I realized that I'd actually never even wondered how jewelry was made, which sounds kind of strange. So what are you guys actually doing over there this week?
Yeah, but why would you though? Because I mean, and it kind of feels funny to me because I feel like I very rarely talk about Tony May stuff on the podcast. And the reason for that is because, I mean, I've been doing that for 15 years now, actually probably longer than that. But it's such a separate world to like the podcasting and broadcast life. But basically the way that I kind of run my schedule a little bit at the moment is, so this week is a week off for broadcast. So there won't be a pickup episode on Sunday, but because we've got a week off and, obviously like Keeshia and I, like we can do these records by distance. I've taken this week with my sister to come over here and to touch base with the factory. So we manufacture in 3 different places. We have a factory in Bali, which we've had for 15 years. We also have an amazing relationship with a factory in India. And then also we manufacture in Australia as well. So for me this week, it's 6 days without the kids, but every single day will be spent at the factory. So when we come here, we're not staying at Canggu. We're not going to we'll go out for dinner and stuff, but we stay right in Denpasar, like right alongside what is the chaos. It's a very different Bali to what I think most people experience if they're coming on a holiday. It's like really built up and it's also kind of more in the towns where a lot of the local people live as well. So it's just a different side of it, but it means that we're closer to the factories. So instead of being caught in that heinous traffic, if you've ever been to Bali, you know that like the traffic can get so congested. We stay right near the factories. And like, it's really cool to be able to kind of split between these two things. And we work so much with silver. And over here, the craftsmen are incredible with silver. They're incredible with stones. And that's why so much of the manufacturing gets done out of Bali. It just, for us, it's been, it makes sense.
I'm very fascinated by how they do it. I love seeing people, to be honest, with any type of craftsmanship. I remember when I was over in Venice and I saw people blow glass for the first time. And I was like, this is absolutely incredible. Like I find it really cool to watch people do things like that where they have such quality skills that we don't really see very much in our day-to-day lives. And yet I wear jewelry every single day. Like it's not something I'd ever thought about.
I also think it's interesting now how brands are approaching the way in which they do social media. So like back in the day, you would never show the kind of behind the scenes of like how things are created or like the manufacturing process. But I think that with the rise of social media and the way in which people communicate their brand messaging, that's changing so much. And instead of it just being about like the polished finished product, people they want to see the making of it. They want to see the techniques that are involved. So I kind of feel like that is just like for us and showing a little bit from behind the curtain, it's also part of the storytelling aspect of Tony May now. So I've brought everything. So like I'll absolutely be taking more of that kind of content while we're here. That's part of it. But also like I think to run a business, you've got to kind of have your fingers on the pulse with what's happening manufacturing wise, no matter where it is. And for me, so much of my time is spent across Life Uncut and across the pickup that every so often I have these like really intense bursts where I've got to like reconnect myself with the Tony May side of things as well.
I also think there's an element, and a lot of people who work from home would feel this, like it's just so different when you can actually be there in person and have
100%.
that like person to person contact. And we spend so much time with you in your like podcasting side of your life. It's kind of weird to me. You're a bit like Batman, like you've just got these two sides.
Except not a vigilante.
But it's really cool that you can get over there and kind of, you know, have that face-to-face contact with the people who enable Tony May to exist and like produce really beautiful jewelry.
Well, it's also amazing to be able to do two jobs that can exist simultaneously that are so different but satiate different parts, because like podcasting is so creative and we get to do so many, like we have incredible conversations. But my original background was like making things with my hands. It was painting, it was printmaking, it was sculpture. Like that's what I studied and that's the shit that I absolutely loved. And that's how I kind of moved into jewelry making in the first place. So I feel like it requires two very separate creative parts of my brain. For me, it's like an incredible privilege that I get to do both of them. But let's get into talking about some of the things that we really wanted to share with you guys today. Because recently, we did an Ask Uncut around friendships recently, which kind of has evolved into more conversations off the back of it. But there was an article that was written. Now, it's an op-ed that was on Refinery 29. It's an article written by Tanyel Mustafa, and it was all around friendship. But the specific part of this in terms of friendship, and it's something that I think so many of us are going to be able to relate to, and so many of us have either experienced it or been the culprits of it ourselves. And it's this idea that when you have a friend who gets into a relationship, that sometimes those friends disappear. They almost get engulfed into the relationship. And then when that relationship breaks down, the friend just reappears. And often sometimes the telltale sign that relationship, that your friend, whoever they're dating, that their relationship is breaking down, is that they start to kind of slowly reinvest themselves into the friendship. You start to hear from them more, then they start to tell you about their relationship problems. All of a sudden they're single again and they want to like reconnect as being really close friends. And it was alarming to me how many people from our Life Uncut community had experienced the same thing. These friends that are almost like fair weather friends who clock in, deeply invest in a relationship or in their friendship when they're not in a relationship. But then as soon as they have a boyfriend, they basically turn into Casper the Ghost.
Yeah, so I just wanted to read one of the paragraphs from the article because I thought it was really interesting. She said, "One of my best friends used to routinely disappear from my life when they were loved up, which always made me feel like a backup plan. Then they would slowly edge back in when breakup was on the horizon, much to my annoyance, which amplified the thought that our friendship didn't matter that much to them. The second time it happened, I said this was shitty friend behavior and I wouldn't tolerate it anymore. Either you're my friend all of the time, single and coupled up, or you're not." And like you said, Laura, we got a lot of messages about the breakdown of friendships, and I was actually quite interested in how many people had experienced this specific kind of pullback of a friendship when they had other things going on, you know, and that other thing just so happened to be a relationship. And we asked you guys on Instagram, like, have you ever experienced this? And these were some of the responses. She only ever wants to hang out either if there's a relationship issue or when she's single. I don't get unprompted messages or anything when she's in a relationship, only some responses. I'm the single fun friend that she can be single with, but doesn't have time for me when she's in a relationship. It's exhausting. Another one said, "Yeah, my best friend of 19 years has had a bit of a habit of doing this. I actually get excited when her relationships end because I know I'm going to get my friend back, but then get worried when she finds a new relationship that I'll be put back on the back burner."
There were so many of these. Like I said, it was alarming to me how common this is, but it did make me ask the question of, and I think that there's a few factors in this. Is it an intentional thing? Is it like, because I would say that there's probably a spectrum of why this is happening in friendships.
Mm.
Is it an intentional, I have a boyfriend now and I don't need my friends? And so somebody gets very all consumed in relationships, which we can. People who have codependency issues can get very sucked in to the intensity of a relationship and in that sense discard some of their friendships. But also I do question, I mean, there's two other things that kind of come to mind. One of them is, where does that friendship sit in order of priority for the person who's so easily able to walk away from it? Because, and I think about some of my friendships and where they've sat in terms of priority in my relationships. I think that there would be people who were friends with me who would have thought the same of me when I started dating Matt. And when my work commitments got really busy, they would have thought, oh, well, now she's in a relationship. She's not putting the effort into my friendship. And it probably is true from their perspective, but also from my personal perspective, and this might sound incredibly harsh, and I wonder if anybody has experienced this as well. Those friends were friends that were for a season. You know, when I say for a season, a reason, a lifetime, they were friends who I would go out with because I was single. They were friends who I would party with, but they're not friends who I ever necessarily saw this like deep connection with. And when your life gets busier, and I mean this in terms of like being in relationships, I don't use that as an excuse for bad shitty friend behavior, but when you're juggling relationships and work and then potentially kids and all the other demands that life is screaming at you with, there is only so much time, and you do have to prioritize the friendships that you want to invest all of your time and energy and love into. It's a very different thing if you have a friend who completely disappears from all friendship groups. But I guess, is it a friend that sees your relationship as the single relationship, the friendship that they clock into when you're both single? I think is a big question mark.
I think that's really interesting because something else that can happen in relationships, and I think I've experienced this myself in this particular relationship, is that I've had other priorities shift for myself as well. For me, in the past year, I've had a lot more of a focus on my health, and I've stopped drinking almost entirely. Like I drink once in a blue moon now. And that's not because I'm in a relationship. That's because I have made the decision that that's what is going to be best for me for my mental health. And so I kind of question whether, you know, like you said, it could be the evolution of a natural relationship that was a seasonal thing. And we all had those friends that, you know, when you're single and you all go out together because you're all single, and then maybe some of you get partnered up. And I'm not trying to excuse people who do this. I'm not trying to say that they're in the right and you should just get over it, because it's a really hurtful thing. And it can also make you feel really used and really like taken advantage of, because you're like, you used my friendship and my time. And I thought it was because we had this really deep and meaningful connection and we supported each other, but you were just getting something out of me. And then now you've got something better to go to.
Well, it's when people use a friendship as an emotional band-aid, especially when you've come off the back of a relationship and you've been broken up with, or you're going through a breakup and you have problems that you want to talk about. And I think so many people experience this version of it when that friend reinserts themselves in your life, but they have a problem. And so you're the fixer and you're the one listening to them talk about their relationship issues. You're the one that's there because they're having a hard time, a bad night. You spend your time, you invest your time in them because you care about them. There's a level of empathy there for what they're going through. But then the very next time that they're in a relationship, they once again just become so scarce, and the level of commitment that you have from them and also the level of what they need from you and what they require from you, it minimizes because they're getting that from their now relationship.
Yeah, well, interesting you say that, because we got two messages actually that I wanted to read to you and get your opinion on. And the first one's a little bit longer. She said, I feel ashamed to admit this, but in the last couple of years, I have been this friend to a couple of people. More recently, one of my closest girlfriends fully cut me off from her life and now actively ignores me, and it's been months. She got really upset with me when I bailed on her for the third time in a row. I adore her and I apologize, but we live 2 hours apart and I just really enjoy spending quality time in with my boyfriend, where she likes to go out to bars and drink. I also like those things, but I chose my partner one too many times and now our friendship is gone. It's a shame because I don't have that many close friends in my life, and I'm starting to wonder if it is a me issue. I'm very lonely and I struggle to keep friends, but I'm also a very busy person in both my family, relationship, and my work life.
Yeah, I think the thing that's so sad is so many of us can prioritize because it's true, you are busy. So many of us are busy. We're busy with work, we're busy with relationships, we're busy with children. Life just gets busier. But it is, and often the thing that seems to be deprioritized is friendships. And from all the conversations that we've had around what makes a happy life in the long term, it's people who not only have strong relationships around them, but have strong friendships. Because what happens if that relationship dissolves? What happens if in 10 years' time or 15 years' time you go through a divorce and you have deprioritized your friendships so much that they don't exist anymore? I think the more realistic way of looking at this is that as we age, we lose friends. Our friendship groups get smaller. But I also think it's important to assess what is the quality of those friendships? What is the time and the energy that you're putting into those friendships? Because I do think it is okay that some friendships fall to the wayside because that is just part of life. You cannot maintain the intensity of friendship with every single person that you were friends with in your 20s as you become friends in your 30s and 40s and so on, because you will also meet new people and you will find new, deeper, and different connections that you want to explore as well. And you have to make room for those. But I guess it's being very clear on who are the friends in your life that you want to be there at the end of your life, that you want to be there no matter what happens or what horrific things life throws at you, because there will come a point where you require that friendship network. And when it's not there and you're going through something that's really challenging, I think that's when it becomes very evident the decisions that you made along the way to let those friendships erode.
Yeah, I also think there's an element of as we get older, priorities are going to shift. It can just be really hurtful when you're the friend on the other side of it, where perhaps those priorities haven't shifted for you yet. You know, like the
Yeah.
main ones being obviously like career, but relationships and then having kids. And I think when you're the single friend and you kind of are talking to someone who appears to be in a bit of a different life stage to you, you can feel a little bit minimized in your problems, and you can feel as though, you know, complaining about the guy who ghosted you just seems so juvenile, even though that is something that very much is a real feeling for you in your life. The only reason I bring that up is because I have been on the receiving end of that. And it's something that I have really tried to be mindful of now that I'm in a relationship, that I don't do that to my single friends, that I allow them to have the space to talk about those things, and whatever's important to them is just as important as what I'm experiencing. Even if it's something that I experienced a million times, it's not a smaller problem because it's their problem. If that, I don't know
It's
if I'm wording this
so
properly.
true.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely wording it perfectly. And I actually had a very similar conversation to this with a girlfriend of mine recently who is single, and she's the last person in her friendship group that's single. And one of her best friends has gone on to get married and have kids. And she expressed it exactly as you're describing it, Keisha. And she said, my problems are never the most important problems
Mm.
because I always have to bend the friendship around the fact that she has children, because everything is harder for her because she's got to get these two kids to XYZ or wherever she is. But she's like, I feel as though I have been so deeply deprioritized that every single time we catch up, every single time there's an outreach, it's because I'm the one that's trying to keep the connection and keep the friendship. And I think for anybody who's experiencing this, it's really hard because there is the big question, is it possible to maintain really close friendships with people who are in fundamentally different stages of life? I think it is, but it's only possible if that comes from a place of mutual respect, where it's also mutual give and take. And it isn't just one friendship and one side of the friendship that's taking, 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 and the other side is giving, 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 and being endlessly available to the other person's problems because one person thinks their problems are bigger. And I do think, and this is a very big basket to lump everyone into because I know it doesn't count for everyone, but I do think that mums are a big culprit for this because it is such a big life shift. So much happens, so much changes. It is so hard to maintain the normalcy that you used to have before that it can be almost as though you have these moments where you're like, if you don't have children, you don't understand. And that is so incredibly minimizing because on one hand, it's true. If you don't have kids, you don't understand how all encompassing and full on it can be. But it also doesn't mean that your problems are the only problems that exist within your friendship groups. And I think that that can be where a lot of breakdowns happen. And it's not the only place. Obviously, we're talking about romantic relationships. But I do think that when women enter the phase of being mums and that becomes part of their life, sometimes the friendships that they have with people who don't have kids can be fractured. Not all the time, but I do see it happen. And I have seen it happen in my own friendship groups.
Do you think that it means that we have to be a little bit more realistic about our expectations of whether we can maintain these friendships long term?
I think it's probably an expectation around intensity of friendship, because I think friendships will go through, and the friendships that weather the longest duration are the friendships that can withstand different types of intensity. The intensity that you might have had in your 20s in a friendship where you thought you and your friends were absolute soulmates, that intensity of the friendship might wane for a couple of years whilst, and I don't want to just keep bringing this back to being a parent, because this could happen in a new relationship. It could happen in many phases. It could happen because one of your friends got a crazy promotion at work and their work is so fully all consuming, which might mean that during that duration where that other pressure is existing, that the intensity of the friendship wanes a little bit and has a little bit more movement for other things to take top priority. Whereas then maybe later on in life, it reshuffles again and you're able to kind of reprioritize those friendships. But I think it's an unreasonable expectation to think that friendships will maintain the exact same intensity through every single thing that happens in life for forever without having any change. And I think if you had that expectation of your friends, you probably will be disappointed, because there will be times where family has to take priority, or a partner has to take priority, or work has to take priority. But it certainly shouldn't mean that the friendship is completely devalued.
Laura, something surrounding this conversation that I think I maybe need to work on a little bit more within my own life. And it actually came up, funnily enough, when we were recording Ask Uncut last week. And bear with me. We were talking about the woman whose partner was going away, whose new fling was going on an overseas trip. And we were saying how we'd hooked up with people. And you were like, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. And I actually interrupted and I said, no, it did mean something. It meant happiness and joy, and that's all it was supposed to mean. And I wonder whether these types of friendships that you go through in different phases of your own life, like for me, I had a group of friends when I moved to Sydney. We used to go out together every single weekend. And there was this big group. We'd go to the beach together. We would go out drinking. We spent so much time together. And then quite coincidentally, almost every single one of us got into a relationship within a month of each other. Like, it was kind of weird. We just felt like dominoes, like
kind of good though from a friendship perspective,
it
because
was
it's
great.
so shit when you're the one person in your friendship group and everyone else gets partnered up and you're like, hey guys, let's go out tonight. And everyone's like, it's Saturday and it's raining and I just want to stay inside.
Yeah, and that is exactly what happened. There was one person who, and I know that he kind of feels a bit like, fuck, come on guys, like, I still want to go out. And I guess for me, I've wanted to reframe how I feel about those types of friendships, and I've moved around a lot as well. And I want to kind of put emphasis on the fact that just because they may not be a lifelong friendship, they were really impactful and beautiful experiences for me to have, and they shaped me into the person that I am. So going back to this whole idea of like, does your friend bail on you when they get into a relationship? The answer to that might be yes. And your result of that feeling or that experience might be that you don't want to be friends with them anymore. But I just don't want you to take away from what the friendship up until that point has meant, because I think seasonal friends can be just as beautiful and just as impactful to your life. And I don't necessarily think that you need to remain friends with people throughout the course of your entire life. Like, not everyone that you're close with maybe needs to be the person that you're close with forever. I'm not sure if I'm thinking about this a little bit too deeply, but I just don't want to take away from the fact that they were really moving friendships for that time. And maybe that's all they were ever supposed to be.
I agree with that completely, but I also question it from the person who feels discarded's perspective, because it might have been an impactful friendship for that person who's now in a relationship, but that doesn't give any solace to the person who's been and has felt discarded, especially when they were under the impression that this was a lifelong friendship. I think it is the mismatch in expectation around what that friendship means to that person, and what does friendship as a whole mean to someone, because there are different types of people in terms of when it comes to how we prioritize friendship. There are some people who prioritize friendship so much and they have the ratio down pat. Like, they understand how important friendship is for their life and for their well-being and for all the things that, I think we have over the years learnt ourselves and we talk about. But then there's people who still don't realize and haven't had that revelation around what and how important friendship is, and especially female friendship, it is the first thing that often gets deprioritized when people get into relationships, because often we can think that being in a relationship is the most important relationship in our life. And so therefore everything else then comes second. But I do think that, some of us have that, we have the equation wrong. There should be some more conscious time and energy that are put into our friendships, not just for the benefit of the other person, but for the benefit of us. We don't know what we're missing out on.
And I think also it's really important to not just maintain those friendships in case you break up. They're not there as a backup plan. As this person wrote in and said, I felt like I was the backup plan. I think that's a really shitty thing to do to people. I think making them feel as though they'll only be of service to your friendship if you've got nothing better on the table, if you don't have any other better plans. I think that's a really horrible thing to do to someone. So look, I don't know what the whole answer is here. I don't know whether it's that we need to maybe shift our expectations of what we want from someone when they do enter relationships or break up from relationships, or I don't know if it's that we need to be more conscious if we are the one in a relationship towards our friends who are maybe single or in a different life phase. I don't really know what the answer is. I mean, I'm no bloody psychologist, that's for sure. But I think it's really important to actually be mindful of these things and to take a bit of like an evaluation of how you interact with your friends throughout your life.
I also think it's okay to have honest conversations with your friends. Like if you feel as though your friend is somebody who completely loses themselves in relationships, I think it's problematic for twofold. One, because you feel discarded, but two, they could also be in problematic toxic relationships where they completely get absolved into that new partnering. I think it's so important to have open communication with your friends and to tell your friends the way in which they make you feel. If they have made you feel as though you are completely irrelevant now that they're in a relationship, it's okay to communicate that, because a great friend and somebody who loves you may not have realized that that's the way that you feel, and they will make more effort. I don't think it's needy to express those feelings. And somebody who doesn't make an effort, doesn't validate the way that you feel, or thinks that you're being unreasonable potentially, I think that that's more of an indicator as to where your friendship sits as a priority for them and what the value of your friendship is to them versus what it is to you. Because sometimes with relationships, like romantic relationships, it can be so much more clear cut because we have the conversation. What are we? So long as you're not in a situationship, you sit down with whoever it is that you're romantically invested in, and you say, what are we? Where do I stand? What is this relationship? And you at some point get clear defining definitions around it. You never get that with a friendship. And also that can be why friendship breakups can be the hardest breakups. They can be as traumatic as a relationship breakup. And it's because you never had anything definitive. Nothing necessarily happened. You just got ghosted or you got weeded out and you don't know why. You don't know what you did wrong. And we have had some amazing conversations with Dr. Hannah Corral around how to break up with a toxic friend. There's also been other episodes where we've spoken about friendship, and we'll link those in the show notes. But I mean, we've spoken so much around when you know that you have a friend who is the one who kind of evaporates when they get into a new relationship. But I'm sure there's going to be people who are listening to this who realize that they're that friend, that they're that person who, when they start dating, they deprioritize their friendships. And to that, I would say that if you're having that realization, or you know that you are somebody who does this, it's an opportunity to have a little bit of self-awareness. It's also the opportunity to be the one to reach out to your friend to have that conversation, not just to expect that everyone's okay with the way in which you have disappeared from their life.
Laura, over the weekend, Lizzo quit. Lizzo, the pop star that probably doesn't need much introduction. She's got 12.1 million followers. She's got 4 Grammys, 1 Emmy. She's 35 years old. She's very, very successful. And she posted on her Instagram, and I'm going to read out exactly what she said. She said, I'm getting tired of putting up with being dragged by everyone in my life and on the internet. All I want is to make music and make people happy and help the world a little better than how I found it. But I'm starting to feel like the world doesn't want me in it. I'm constantly up against lies being told about me for clout and views, being the butt of the joke every single time because of how I look, my character being picked apart by people who don't know me and disrespecting my name. I didn't sign up for this. I quit. And this comes off of the back of 2 kind of events that have happened in the past. And quite ironically, Laura, you and I recorded an episode last August when the main one of these controversies actually broke. It was at the time that 3 of her previous dancers, plus a couple of other people on the side, but the 3 are the ones who have actually gone to court, accused her and are now suing her for sexual harassment, racial discrimination, and fostering a hostile work environment.
We got into such a deep dive on this, and we'll link that in the show notes as well if you guys want to understand like the backstory around what happened with Lizzo, because it was so alarming. She at the time was at the absolute peak and put on such a pedestal for her achievements, for her body inclusivity, for her being a cultural reference point and being an icon for all matters of inclusivity, whether it was race inclusivity, size inclusivity. And the fact that she was so and is so proud and so vocal about how she views herself and her weight. She has had no shame and no reservations to come forward and talk about how she is, her words, fat and beautiful and sexy. And I think we have no issue, and this is what we spoke about on the last ep, we have no issue when skinny people and people who are atypically hot talk about being hot, but we do have an issue with it when it sits outside the norms. And I think Lizzo really redefined that. And it was this sense of confidence that we haven't seen. To see those allegations and to see the deplatforming that happened post that was really quite shocking for a lot of people, and certainly for us as well. And with the big question we had and the big conversation we had then was, will she be cancelled? And we ended that episode saying no.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm still questioning whether that's happened, but I'll fill you in on a couple of what's happened more recently so that you can make up your own mind. Lizzo essentially had the choice as to whether she wanted to settle this court case out of court. But as a part of that, she would have had to accept a little bit of responsibility and accountability. So she would have had to say, I am partially, or at least in part, guilty of what you're accusing me of, and here's some money to make the problem go away. Let's settle this out of court. She didn't do that. She completely denied every single claim. They have gone to court in February, and they have asked for the charges to be dismissed. Some of them were, some of them weren't. Fast forward to last week. And the Democratic National Committee had a big fundraiser. So now some big dogs were there. We have the current president of Joe Biden. We also had Barack Obama and Bill Clinton at this huge fundraiser. They raised over $26 million for Biden's re-election campaign. And Lizzo was asked to perform at this event. And I am assuming that she was paid quite a large amount of money. So this is where a lot of people kind of got their feathers in a flurry. A lot of people went onto Twitter or X, and they essentially said things like, oh, birds of a feather flock together. Here are all of the sexual assault claims that Joe Biden has had. And here are all of the sexual assault claims that Bill Clinton had when he was in office and after he was in office. They essentially wanted to lump the two of these things in together. And that's where I think the main question that I have today for you, Laws, and I don't even know exactly where I sit on this, but do you think objectively, if anyone has an accusation that is active in court for sexual assault, do you think they should be able to be paid to perform at something like a political fundraiser?
This for me, and I had to check my own bias with this because I mean, we saw it recently with Jason Derulo, who was performing. He has open sexual assault allegations against him. We see it in the sporting world with the conversation as to whether footballers should be allowed to continue to play or not play when a sexual assault allegation is raised. Now, I first read this and I was like, fuck, like really? Like let the girl play. But then I thought about it again and I was like, do I feel differently because she's female and this is Lizzo? And I am almost giving her a get out of jail free card because partly I want to say that I think people should be able to be given the opportunity of being innocent until proven guilty. I think it is very damaging and damning for someone's career to be judged by the courts of social media and by people's social opinions because it can completely derail someone's career and it can be defamation. But in this instance, at the same time, I'm like, well, am I just treating her and thinking of her differently because she's a female in a world where normally when we hear about sexual assault allegations, it is from a man? And I think like to unpack that a little bit, and I want to go back to the sporting thing for a second, because there's definitely two sides to this, right? There are people who think that sporting players should be allowed to continue to play football, even if they have an allegation against them, because it's not been proven that they're actually guilty of it. Now, on one hand, we know that it's incredibly hard to prove sexual assault allegations because often it's one person's word against the other. But also, I think in the instance of sport, there is a real culture of like bro culture. It's been a fundamental issue for so many years that sexual assault allegations have been so prevalent. So the pendulum had to swing immensely in order to be not just a threat, but to reset what's happening within the sporting environment. So for me, I was like fully in support of that. I don't think that players should be able to play if they have sexual assault allegations against them. And then I kind of think about, well, what's the other side of this? Because what if Lizzo is completely let off all of these? She's not found guilty for any of them. She is, as she says, a lot of this is done for clout or it is bullying or harassment. I question, should we be deplatforming someone before it's proven that they're actually at fault for what it is that they've done? And then it made me think a little bit more about Lizzo specifically, because I don't know if the amount of fury that she's receiving actually has to do with the fact that there are these sexual assault allegations. I would go so far as to say that a lot of people don't even know that they exist. Looking at her announcement post and her saying that she quit and sharing that on social media, that was also reshared on Puberty. That's where I first saw it. So Puberty is like a big social commentary Instagram account. They have loads of followers, and they posted an article saying that Lizzo was quitting. Now, these are some of the comments that were on the bottom of that. Oh my God, 5 seats just opened up at the Grammys. Why are people so mean? She got a lot on her plate. People will do anything except go on a diet and work out. First Pluto, now Lizzo. Planets are dropping fast. Is she quitting eating? Question mark. She decided to be the bigger person. Ha ha ha. I'm reading these in chronological order. This is not me picking out the worst. I'm reading chronological order, people's responses to Lizzo quitting. So when I saw these comments, it made me ask the question, do people actually have, like, is this the issue, quote unquote, that people have? Is it coming off the back of these assault allegations? Or is it the way she presents in the world? Is it the fact that she is a person in a bigger body who demands attention and demands confidence and respect? And is that something that we are not okay with? Because there were very, very few comments that actually pertained to the allegation side of thing. It was all attacking her weight. And this is something that she has definitely been very vocal about and she has struggled with throughout her entire career. It is how much people seem to deeply hate the fact that fat people just exist. And that's something that she has said.
I completely agree with you. I think that as soon as these allegations were made, it was a get out of jail free ticket for fat phobic and misogynistic people to attack her. So that aside, and I very much agree with you, Laws, that this exists so much in the grey for me, because there are a couple of elements to this that I question the whole justice system of like innocent until proven guilty versus the court of public opinion versus what's the difference between public opinion and what's trolling. And I think it's important to recognize that, especially within America. I spoke to one of my best friends yesterday about this because I was really interested from her perspective. She's a lawyer. And she was like, the thing that I think a lot of people aren't as aware of as what maybe they should be is how slow these procedures happen. So if you talk about the fact that someone shouldn't be entitled to work while they have these allegations against them, you're talking about the fact that they're likely not going to be able to work for 12 to 18 months. This is not something that happens quickly. They are really drawn out processes. And for someone like Lizzo, I don't think that's that much of an issue. I think she'd be getting enough money from royalties, from brand deals, like all of these kinds of things that she still has going on in the background because of her music. And that's where I kind of question, does it change when someone's not as big of a star as someone who is Lizzo? And, you know, you brought up the sports example, and the most recent one that I can think was really, really in the media was the case with Jack DeBellin. He plays for the Dragons. He had allegations of sexual assault. It went through 2 court cases, and he was not allowed to play during that time, but he was still paid by the club. Other people that have continued to work while they have had active sexual assault allegations. And these are the ones that my mind naturally springs to when I heard this initially being brought up about Lizzo. Harvey Weinstein. I don't feel like I need to give examples of him. Bill Cosby faced allegations of sexual assault and misconduct from multiple women over several years. And despite those allegations, he continued to work until he was convicted in 2018. R. Kelly has faced numerous allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct over the decades. Despite that, continued to work until he was convicted on federal charges in 2021. Louis C.K., he's a comedian that faced allegations of sexual misconduct and inappropriate behaviour from multiple women. Despite the allegations, he's continued to perform stand-up comedy, release projects, although he has faced backlash and criticism. But no conviction. And then one other person that I thought really existed in the grey for me was Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was an NBA player, and back in 2003, he had sexual assault allegations lodged against him. He ended up settling that out of court, so he had to assume some responsibility for that. He then went on to be one of the most recognized and adored basketballers of all time, and he very tragically died in 2020 with his daughter in the helicopter crash that I'm sure everyone's aware of.
I think the thing though with this, Keish, though, the points that you're making, why I have such a bias and why I find this conversation quite difficult is because the issue with sexual assault as a category, it encompasses so much. And like the male celebrities that you have just mentioned who have been convicted for sexual assault, some of those convictions were rape. And I think we cannot look at this with the same blanket, and we can't paint it with the same brush when there are such vastly different crimes that have been committed. And, you know, when you use the word sexual assault, just for anybody who's not unsure what that actually entails, but it is coercion or manipulation into any unwanted sexual activity. In the instance of Lizzo, it was having dancers dance alongside someone who was naked on stage within a sex act. I think there's something happened in Amsterdam. The details of it are a little bit obscure, but 3 of her dancers they felt coerced to participate in a dance that they didn't want to participate in. When you compare that to someone who has been drugged and raped, those allegations are so vastly different. So to think that on one hand, within the world, we've had people be able to continue to work and be innocent until proven guilty, versus someone like Lizzo who's being held up in the court of public opinion. Now, I'm not saying that what those dancers experienced isn't grotesque and it's not been incredibly hurtful, but what I am saying is that ultimately the damage has been done to her career and her reputation, and people are using this as a get out of jail free card in order to say and do and to totally minimize everything else that she's done in the world of pop culture and everything else that she's done for the world of inclusivity.
Yeah, Laws, and I think that that's the biggest problem with these umbrella terms, and that's why this particular conversation, I don't think that we're able to be as black and white about it as what we normally would, because like I said, if, you know, the question is asked of do you think someone should be able to continue working and being paid a lot of money to perform at things like political events when they have active sexual assault allegations, my natural thought is of course not. Like, of course that shouldn't be allowed. But when you get into the detail of it and approach it in a little bit more of a nuanced way, especially when you compare it to what other male celebrities have been able to get away with, it's an incomparable situation. And I think that I'm holding her up by saying no, she shouldn't be allowed to perform at things like this. I'm holding her up to a standard of which other people are not held up to.
And I think the repercussions for her have been so much worse. I think the unrelenting backlash that she has received for her transgressions, and I don't know if that's even the right way of describing it, but for the things of which she's been accused for, I do think that the public reaction has been so immense. And I would be interested to know if people think the same. You know, I mean, comes to mind like Johnny Depp, for example, and the allegations that he experienced. And I don't know, I mean, I think it is such an incredible shame because Lizzo, who has stood for so much and has done so much positivity in the world of inclusivity, in talking about racism, in really being a voice for and a face for this whole inclusive movement, it's as though everything that she stood for, that it was good, has been undone by the way in which now she's being viewed. And that to me is what represents cancellation. It's that it didn't matter who you were before because now you're bad. And it's so black and white, and it doesn't allow for any of the positive things to be able to still be true at the same time.
Yeah, I also think it's made me think about the difference between being guilty of a crime and actually just being people hating you, you know, like a consequence of public opinion finding one thing that you fucked up with and you maybe did wrong. And I have to say, you maybe did wrong. Like the consequences of this, I would deem to be worse than if she had have actually been found guilty of these things in court, because the sexual assault allegations, as we've already stated, were not particularly severe in comparison to other people that we've seen in Hollywood. So, like I said at the start of this, I don't even know where I stand on this. I don't know where I land and I go, yes, I'm okay with this, or no, I'm not okay with this. And I just feel sad about this situation. I feel sad that she has been pushed into a corner where the hate was so great and it was so awful and it was so relentless that she's like, fuck this, I'm out. Because I can only imagine what it would take for someone with the confidence that she went into this situation with to be broken down like that. You know, this is someone who went in with a lot more vigor and a lot more resilience than what I think any of us have. And yet it's been too much for her to say, I'm going to keep making art for you.
Also, the last thing I want to say in the terms of cancel culture, because I mean, I find cancel culture such an interesting thing to unpack. I genuinely think that when you have been deemed as though you've done something wrong in the eyes of public opinion, and even if you are not actually guilty, you are guilty in the world of public opinion. It doesn't matter what you do and it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how you communicate that you're sorry. It'll never be good enough. So I think the problem is now is that even though Lizzo will try so hard to communicate the person that she is, to stand for the things that are important to her, nothing will ever undo how that taints people's perception of her. So that will always follow her around, whether it means that she's cancelled forever. She may be able to reinvent herself in some ways, and we may still see music from Lizzo. But I think the issue is that she will always be tainted by this opinion that exists now of her.
I think it'll be interesting to see what her next step is. She initially had said that there was new music coming. That was only a couple of days ago. She posted on her Instagram, and I'm not sure if that music will ever see the light of day. I don't know how long she will feel this way for. It could be forever.
All right, it is time for Accidentally Unfiltered, your most embarrassing stories. And this one is absolutely rank, is the word that I'm looking for. My fiance was away for work and I was feeling a little hot and heavy when I was in the shower. So I quickly popped out and got my clit sucker vibrator from the bathroom drawer. Anyways, after I had been sitting on the shower floor, getting into it for a few minutes, I felt a little sting down there. And when I looked down to investigate, to my absolute horror, my entire clit slash vulva was covered in little black ants. They had obviously made a nest in the hole of the clit sucker and got washed out all over me. My vagina dead set looked like a Baker's Delight poppy seed roll. Thank God I was already in the shower and I could just wash them all off ASAP before I literally got eaten out by 1,000 ants. It's so bad.
no.
Although this makes me think, did you not rinse this and wash this properly? Because why would the ants be nesting in a vibrator?
I
Why?
do not want to think about that. I do not want to
Wash
think
your
about the
toys.
vaginal juices that are use a hypoallergenic soap. Use a pH neutral one. I initially thought when she was saying this, I thought that she was going to say it must not have been waterproof because she was using it in the shower, and I thought it was electrocuting her. Ants are worse.
Well, I mean, it's probably a good thing that you're in the shower, but also who's masturbating in the shower? Am I doing it wrong? There's never been a time where I'm in the shower and I would have thought to have done it there. It's just like there's no, like, water is not lubricant. Water is a very unlubricating medium, put it that way.
However, the cleanup is really easy.
This is true. But how much cleanup do you need?
Well, if you're a squirter, fair bit.
Oh, that's fair. All right. Anyway, guys, if you have an Accidentally Unfiltered, doesn't matter how revolting it is, please send it in to us, your most embarrassing stories. We absolutely love them. Also, that's going to scar me. I'm going to dream about that one and not in a good way.
Yeah, well, let's get into our suck and sweet of the week. It is the highlight and the low light of each and every week. Laws, what's your highlight? No, sorry, what's your suck?
Okay, my suck for the week is getting sick and also the kids being sick and not being able to be there, which I feel very guilty about. But yesterday afternoon, you know when you just, you know it's brewing. So we did the Easter egg hunts. Everyone was having a great time. And then everyone just sat on the couch and was looking a little bit tireder than what they should have. And I was like, oh, the sugar really took it out of them. But no, it was a fever. And it was coming for us. And then when I got to the airport, I also had a scratchy throat. And then Matt messaged me yesterday and he was like, I'm dead. He's like, I'm swallowing razor blades. So some sort of shit daycare bug has ripped through our house once again. And that is my suck of the week. My sweet for the week, I mean, coming to Bali, that's my sweet for the week. It's been genuinely, I feel like I've had multiple sweets this week. Easter with the girls was amazing. We had a really amazing Saturday as well. But I don't very often get to have grown up time without the kids with my sister. And even though we see each other all the time, it's kind of like my relationship with Britt. We see each other all the time. We're always together, but we're always working. And I feel like being away for the next 6 nights and being over here in Bali just with her, it's going to give us so much time to do the Tony May stuff that we want to do, but also to really clock in on our friendship, just talking about friendship and all. So for me, even just being on the plane yesterday and us laughing about stupid shit that we were talking about and rehashing childhood stories and stuff, like it was genuinely so joyful. And I I love that we get to spend this time together. So that is my sweet for the week.
That's some beautiful quality time.
Well, also sometimes you have friends or maybe it's just your siblings as well, but like you see people a lot, but you don't actually have time as friends. You don't have time talking about the things that are going on in your life.
I think a lot of relationships are like that. Like you live together and you see each other in the in and out, but you haven't actually had that really quality time together where you're making memories. You're just living and kind of coexisting. And I'm not saying that that's
Totally.
like, you're not at fault for that. It's just the busyness of life. But a lot of people, I think, have that in their actual romantic relationships.
Totally. Well, that is my sweet. Kishi, what is your suck for the week?
My suck for the week is actually, it's not planning anything over Easter. I didn't really realize that. Look, it's twofold because on one hand, I really enjoyed just being home and having this relaxing time to kind of get some stuff done that I've wanted to do for a really long time and feel like I was a bit on top of it. But when I FaceTimed my nephews yesterday, my whole family, my grandma, so we've got 4 generations. I've still got some of my grandparents. So my grandma was there, who is their great grandma, plus, my brother and like parents. And like, I kind of just felt like, I've spent so much of my adult life living away from my family. And usually I'm in a city that is plane distance away. So I've missed out on a lot of family things because it's quite difficult to get back for them. But now my family live in Newcastle and it's only like a 2.5 hour drive. So really I should be making the effort a lot more. And I just kind of realized that I didn't put the effort into planning that and going up and spending that time with them. And I kind of felt a bit like, that would have been a cool thing to go to, but maybe next year. So
I'm sorry, I really dug the sword in at the start of this episode when I was like, if you don't make the time to be the memory makers in your family, then time really passes you by. It is true.
It's true. But the reason that I didn't spend time with them is because I didn't think about it. For me, it's not, we're not making those memories. It's just the fact that I wasn't cognizant of actually needing to insert myself into them. So that was my suck. But my sweet for the week was last Wednesday night, very last minute. My friend Soph, Laura, you know her because she works within the radio station that we usually record the podcast in. Her and I went to see West Side Story at, I don't even know what the actual location is because they have built this stage that is literally on Sydney Harbour. And when I mean on, I mean actually on the water. It is phenomenal. The stage is like 2.5 times the size of a normal theatre production. The actual production itself was so cool. And the story is kind of it's like a take on Romeo and Juliet, but it's modern times and it's Anglo-Americans versus the Puerto Ricans and it's a bit of a gang war. And recently, Soph and I have also been to the basketball together and we've been to the footy together. And I looked at her and I was like, I didn't realize that I would get to this point of my life and I would actually just so deeply appreciate a friendship that had so many of the same interests as what I have. And we got to go to this phenomenal production. It is so, so, so cool. The water was like lapping up against the stage. You could hear it. The opera house is in the background of the theatre. And I was truly just like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you're around Sydney and you're thinking about going, I cannot recommend it more. It was worth every single dollar. And I think there was also something where I was like, this is so funny. I thought that I'd want to bring a partner to this, but actually what I want to bring is someone who enjoys it as much as what I do so that they get as much joy out of it as what I can. And it was just the best. It was such an incredible experience and it was like a highlight probably for my year.
And that is also a simultaneous vibe for Keish for this week as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, anyway, guys, that is it from us. If you've enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend. You know the drill. We're also on socials. You can see all the stuffs at Life Uncut Podcast on Instagram. You can join us on TikTok. And also we have all the episodes slowly getting released on YouTube as well. So you can please go and watch them all there. And you guys know the drill.
Tell your mum, tell your dad, tell your dog, tell your friends and share the love because
we love love.